O.J. Simpson died after a long battle with prostate cancer, where he had spent the last part of his life as a released convict after serving 9 years in prison for armed robbery and found liable in a civil trial for the murder of his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. His 1995 acquittal of double murder mesmerized the public, exposed divisions of race, and brought domestic violence to the forefront. Trial attorney Karen Conti, who has represented several high-profile suspects, was friends with both prosecutor Marcia Clark and defense attorney Robert Shapiro, and she joins us now with more on this. Good morning to you, Karen. This was one of the first high-profile televised trials. How has the issue of cameras in the courtroom evolved, and was it good for the public's understanding of the criminal justice system?
Well, we've always had a right to walk down to the courthouse and watch the drama, but this brought it into our living rooms. And an unprecedented number of people watched gavel to gavel coverage. I mean, 150 million people watched the verdict. Imagine that. And I think what it did was it taught people the process. I mean, I heard people talk about voir dire and sidebars, and people learned what really happens in a courtroom, how important it is to have credibility when you're a witness, how a police investigation can be messed up if it's not done correctly. And I really think that people have, there's a cottage industry now of legal pundits. In fact, I got my start doing legal analysis. And I think that we now have just a better understanding of how this process works.
Yeah, and despite the abundance of DNA evidence, we know there was 61 blood drops, 3 labs concluded it was O.J.'s. The jury acquitted him. Why did this happen, and how has the jurors' understanding of DNA evolved? Do you think Simpson would have been acquitted if the trial happened today?
Well, DNA was established and reliable back at that time, but the public didn't really understand that, and they were very suspect of it. There was 9 weeks of trial testimony about DNA. Now jurors walk into the courtroom, and not only do they understand the reliability of DNA, they demand it. And if there is no DNA, they are likely to acquit. So I think, it's very, very possible that if this case were tried today, those jurors would have a better understanding and would be much more likely to convict.
Yeah, and O.J., of course, had celebrity, he had money, he was able to hire this dream team. How did this affect the outcome here, and what does this say about, do you think, the fairness of our system?
Well, like anything in life, if you have money, you're going to get better education, better medical services, etc. So I think it's very clear that if you get better lawyers, you're going to have a better outcome. But the converse is also true. If you don't have money, you get bad lawyers and you get bad outcomes. So although a lot of people think O.J. Simpson verdict was incorrect because he had these good lawyers, think about how many guilty people, had that happen to them versus how many innocent people actually go to jail.
And Karen, you have handled many domestic violence cases for perpetrators, for victims. How did the Simpson trial change the way domestic violence was viewed?
Drastically. There was a federal law passed almost immediately after the crime was committed that changed the way police handled these things. It used to be police would walk the perpetrator around the block and say, go back to your wife. That does not happen anymore, and that's good. Also, the prosecution is a lot easier. There's almost a no tolerance policy on these things. And I think even the jurors used to walk out of the O.J. Simpson trial and they would, at the very end, one of them said, why are we talking about domestic violence? This is a murder case. Well, we all know now that we can connect the dots, that domestic violence can turn into murder.
And finally, looking back right now, the prosecution and the defense, all the attorneys, they all had a career boost after the Simpson case. You yourself, you represented notorious serial killer John Wayne Gacy when he was on death row. And you just wrote a book, by the way, called The Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy, which is fascinating. Also, full circle here, your friend Robert Shapiro endorsed your book. I'm just curious if he ever talked to you about this. Did he ever feel like he was guilty? And as a defense attorney, if you know your client is guilty, how do you reconcile that at trial? Do you have to, how are you able to defend someone if you actually feel they are guilty?
Well, we represent people from all walks of life, guilty or innocent. We don't judge them when they come in. I do my part as a defense lawyer, and justice will get done because I'm not the one making justice. So we really don't parse it that way. If we know someone's guilty, they're probably guilty of something. We have to try our case and put the burden beyond a reasonable doubt. Robert Shapiro was a gentleman, a really kind man, and he could not really tell me exactly what he thought or what O.J. said to him, but he has gone on record to say that there is such a thing as moral justice and legal justice. And he says that legal justice was done in O.J. Simpson's case, and he left the rest of it for our imagination. So I think we all understand what he meant by that.
Karen Conti, always great talking to you. I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for joining us this morning.
To Jan. Thank you.